let's say you have like 3 people that like your music in the whole world. Start with them. 3 people that have heard your music. Maybe one that passed by on the street while you were busking. Talk to them, make them feel, let them know that you appreciate them and establish that relationship. Really start with one, because if you can't get 1 or 5, how can you get 100 or 1,000?
Violetta, thanks for coming on. We met each other in person about 2 months ago now at the CryptoPunks event in Toledo. And we had a very brief chat, and I left that conversation with this long list of questions that I wish I had the chance to ask you. So thanks for coming on and having this conversation. I honestly think that you have a really beautiful human story around being able to rebuild your music career using on-chain tools, blockchain technology, and perhaps most importantly, being able to build a community from scratch on your own terms and independently around your music. And you're currently #1 NFT singer-songwriter. And, we're going to get into your story in a moment. But first of all, I'd love to just rewind a bit and understand where you were mentally before you took your first experiment, in the Web3 space. And, how did blockchain technology allow you to rebuild your career on your own terms?
Yeah, thank you so much, first of all, for having me. I'm glad we can continue the conversation. And I really like the question. You said, where were you mentally? Because mentally is like the most important thing, right? It's really the thing that will make you or break you where you are mentally. And it was really that, because, physically I was the same person, right? Obviously the same, but I was coming from 8 years of grinding in the traditional music industry. I started very young. I was barely 18 when I was sort of catapulted in it, in the real industry, like predatory one, so to speak, with the big record labels. And so you can imagine 8 years of going through that and then going independent, then hustling as an independent artist. And then there's COVID that just like makes it all so much harder, where an independent artist, nowadays, unless they're doing something creative like Web3, blockchain, their best bet is to tour, and make money out on the road. And with COVID, we couldn't do that anymore, obviously. And I was mentally drained because I thought I'd tried everything. I felt defeated. I felt like I was fighting a battle that I couldn't win because the other players were too big for me to even try to communicate with and try to decipher what the rules of the game would be. And so it just felt like a losing game for me. And at that point in 2021, I gave myself a last chance. I said, I was 26 at the time, which sounds young, but for someone who's done it since they're in high school, it definitely takes a toll on you mentally. And at the same time, it's still young that you can sort of start over, if something hasn't worked out. And so I said to myself, I'll just try one last thing. And if in 1 year from now, I'm not where I want to be, then that's it. I'm going to go to college. I'd never been to college. I'm going to do whatever. And I think it was that last ultimatum that I gave myself that ultimately pushed me to get extra creative and discover something that had never even crossed my radar.
And kind of look elsewhere, like some other form, other structure.
Yes.
Other concept, right? So just rewinding a little bit, what would you say was, like, why did you make that decision? Like, was there something broken about the industry that you were in, experiences that you were having? Like, what was the setup there?
Yeah, not many people know about the setup in the music industry, really, and so I'm glad you're asking about it. I also I had a conversation just now in Marfa where I was with a few people who turns out had no idea how it actually works in the industry. Basically, the artist is at the bottom of the chain, at the bottom of the pyramid, and at the top, there are basically tech companies. This all started at the beginning of the last century when all of a sudden, when hardware manufacturers, companies like, when Edison basically invented the phonograph. And so all of a sudden, all these companies, like we already see now, there's a cool new technological advancement and all the tech companies jump in, they make their own version, and they realize that all people wanted was music. They wanted to have it more accessible. And so they started creating the tech hardware to make it accessible. And from that moment on, they started signing artists under exclusive deals so they could sell more hardware, basically. So that is still the case, that is still the case that it was 100 years ago, where now tech companies like streaming platforms primarily, but also record labels like Columbia, went from being a hardware company to being a record label. They leverage artists the same way, just to sell a tech platform or something else, merch or whatever. And so ultimately, music is just a tool to sell something else in the business mind. But in the artist's mind, that's not the dream we're sold. The dream we're sold is, oh my God, I'm going to pour myself into this and I'm going to connect with people and I'm going to, travel the world and do what I love. But yeah, we're basically relying on this zero-sum game where you put a song up on streaming, you get paid 1/3 of a cent per stream. So someone like me who did decent numbers on Spotify with over 10 million streams, it's like $3,000 per million over 10 years. So it's like you're not really, gonna make a living out of it. And it's basically a monopoly. I like to give this example. Just recently, I had randomly a song I wrote got cut in a K-pop album by one of the biggest K-pop bands in the world. Twice is the name of the band. And it's a song I wrote when I was still doing the music industry thing in 2021. And 4 years later, it was, for some reason, the band liked it, or the management company liked it, and they recorded it. And they're huge. I mean, they have 100 million followers on all the social media. The album came out and it sold 120,000 physical CDs in Japan in 5 days. 120,000 copies. My cut as a writer is, I think it was like $2,500 that goes to the record label. So, because that's the contract I had with them.
And what do you see from that?
I will never see anything until they will recoup like some kind of advance they gave me at the beginning. But it's like a lifetime, kind of loan they give you at the beginning. But I mean, just 120,000 CDs, it's $2,000. I mean, how? For the person that wrote this, it's just not sustainable, right? Unless you do it independently, right? Which is what I decided to do, without needing all those intermediaries. So.
And you spoke about like this image that you have in your head when you are the artist versus the reality. And what would you say was the main discrepancy there with like what you were sold or what was portrayed versus what actually did pan out and happen?
I always thought I could be free to express myself. And that's what I thought music was. I thought it was, okay, an artist or anyone has something to say and they best say it through art or music, and that is what is valuable. And that is what will be served no matter what. That will be the priority. That was the very naive idea I had in my head. I had the first hint that that wasn't the case when at 18 years old, I did X Factor in Italy. And I finished third. So I got all the way to the final and, signed a major record deal with Sony Music. But I had that first glimpse when during the show, you've seen X Factor, right? You have it in the UK as
well. Of course, yes, yeah.
It's all staged, it's TV, and they don't care whether you feel comfortable or the song you're singing feels real to you or the dress you're wearing feels right. It doesn't matter. It's a TV show and it's scripted. And so that's when I first started figuring out, okay, I don't think they care about music. And I always felt music is a very hard career. So is art. Any art is a very difficult career. And the same for any entrepreneur. So you have to really, really love it because otherwise it's just not worth it, so.
Yeah. Hence why you probably felt like, you were very passionate about what you were doing, obviously. And I'm sure in hindsight, you were very thankful to yourself that you did take one last swing at everything, right?
Yes.
So then just looking back, of course, you had success at a really young age, which has its pros and cons, I'm sure. At that time, what would you say that success was actually costing you?
Honestly, of course, at the time, it wasn't always easy. But now in hindsight, I think I would do it all the same because what it cost me, it was cheaper, quote unquote, than what I learned. The experience I gained from starting very young, it was relatively accessible, relatively cheap. And if we want to talk in those terms with that metaphor, I was very young, very naive, right? Very just whatever, I'm young. And, but at the same time, I really, really loved it. And I really felt like music was my thing. And so I never wanted to mess it up. So I had this huge pressure I put on myself. And that, that is one of the prices I paid. I never really relaxed. A lot of people live their life in their 20s, just having fun and whatever, going on a gap year. I opened my first company at 18 and I became a, entrepreneur and started paying my taxes at 18. And that's something not every 18-year-old has to do. Of course, and having to deal with, big corporate situations at that young age, that was definitely scary. But at the same time, I was quite lighthearted about it, I think, because I was stubborn and young and I didn't have the fears that I may have now at the age of 30. I could afford to lose everything and start over. I could afford to just make mistakes. And even when I got locked into a really terrible record deal, it was for 5 years. I was able to get out of it sooner. But I was like, oh, in 5 years, I'll just be 23, whatever. It was fine. If it happened now, I'd be a bit more cautious, But yeah, the only thing that it cost me, it was really just it's like when you're running a marathon, it costs you a lot. It's very, very tiring. But then at the end, you're like, oh my God, I'm glad I trained so much. And I'm glad I was so tired that whole time, Yeah, you do it. And I think, for personally myself, I feel like maybe you sort of lose your 20s when you're grinding and you're trying to get somewhere and you're in entertainment specifically, right? It's a lot of time and a lot of hours that you need to put in to really achieve anything at that time. Yeah, but I don't think for me, I couldn't think of a better way to spend my 20s other than being aware of my dream and chasing it, So
Exactly. So speaking of chasing the dream, part of the, I would say the topic that I'm trying to center around for this season is obviously Web3 and blockchain, but the human side of that. And, the technology right now, it could be quite dense and quite complex to understand everything. But, at the end of the day, all technology becomes invisible at some point. And so I would love to know and help to demystify some of the complexities around like how you discovered NFTs, putting yourself back in that time. What NFTs spoke to you, how did you come across it, and why you decided to take your, I guess, like your final swing with NFTs and blockchain tech?
Yeah. So the way it happened at first was because, so I was sort of halfway through that final swing year. And I went home for Christmas, for the holidays, back to Italy, where I'm from. And so I have to talk about my mom, since we're talking about the human side of it. It's I always had a lot of support from my parents. I have to say this, like even what I said earlier, being able to follow your calling in your 20s, having the support of your family is big. And I was very, very lucky to have that. My parents always believed that I could do it. And whenever they felt like I was giving up or showing signs of giving up, they would give me the tough love, and make me feel like, oh, okay, if you want to get a job now because you can't make money from your music, then maybe you don't want music that much, do you? That kind of thing. It's like the tough love sometimes you need. That works on me at least. And so same thing happened when I went home. And I was expressing with my mom, just talking like, oh God, I just have another 6 months to figure this out. Like, what am I going to do? And she turns around and she's like, hey, have you heard of NFTs? And that was the first time I ever heard that word, because my mom brought it up, and she's like in her 60s, but she's super perceptive to all things innovation, and she wasn't into them herself. She wasn't trading or art collecting or anything, but she just knows what goes on in the world. And she was like, yeah, people are basically collecting art digitally, all kinds of art, whether it's memberships or comics or even physical art and music. Even Snoop Dogg is doing it. You should look into it. And at first I was like, because I was never a tech person, like I couldn't care less about tech or money or nothing like that. Finance, not at all. Trading, zero. I had an iPhone 6 at that time, like just, and I'm just a girl with a guitar. And she's like, yeah, well, if you're not willing to try this, then you may as well quit right now.
Wow.
And that was my challenge. I was like, okay, I don't want to let my mom down. Literally, the human side of it. Sometimes you just need someone that you really care about to make you feel like they believe in you so much that if you don't, they might change their opinion about you, So that was what tipped me over the edge. And I was like, okay, watch. And that gave me the drive to figure out the technical side of it relatively easily, because I really think that part itself is quite easy. It's the conceptual and philosophical aspect of decentralization and the blockchain and just the mindset shift that any user needs to have in order to use the tech seamlessly. But the tech side of it, really, yeah, the scariest part is don't click links. I mean, that's the scary part.
Yeah, don't get your wallet drained.
That's it, right? But that ties into the conceptual side of it. Like, what's yours is actually yours, right? And so you may lose it. But we don't own much in this life. Anything that's digital, we don't own it. We don't own music, movies, pictures, nothing. And so that conceptual shift needs to happen. And that happened pretty fast to me. So that was my start.
I was going to ask you, like, what was the main thing that really clicked for you? Was it the ownership side of it?
Yes, it really was. Because especially for music that's a form of art that's very intangible, it's very fleeting. One moment it's there, 2 minutes later it's not. And you ask yourself, did that even ever happen? Like, did I just hear that? It's not something you can hold or even look at for longer. than what the artist decides. And so the idea of being able to own a piece of music or a piece of this kind of fleeting art digitally, because we live in a world that's fully digital, and vinyl is gone, CDs are gone, Spotify and Apple Music is the only thing that we have, but it's not owned by us. That was revolutionary to me. That opened my brain like a window, like, oh my God, this could really change the world. Like, it could. And so it was the ownership aspect. And the fact that people then were connecting over the concept of ownership like they do in many other instances, like people collecting anything, they bond over something they're passionate about. But if we cannot own anything, therefore we cannot identify with anything, how can we bond? And to me, blockchain unlocked that. Now we can all own something on the internet and therefore bond with each other. So,
which is like everything is blending like that. I was on the street. I was driving the other day and I saw some people on the corner with the camera on a tripod, and they looked like they were streaming. And I was just like, wow, there's this whole other world where everybody actually is, that they're speaking to or speaking into, right? And it makes so much sense that world, A, blends with ours, and B, you should be able to have ownership in that world like you do here. And so, it's been clicking like over the past, I think I started to really think about it around 2017. And then beyond that, then NFTs arrived, and the whole ownership of not just like crypto and finance, but objects, art, etc., how we sort of got into it, and then music and more. I mean, I'm sure there's way more use cases that are going to come out of this. And I'm really interested because I'm going to be speaking to a lot more people about their stories and how many people can actually say it was their mother that put them on the map to actually understand NFTs.
My mom is really special. She knows a lot about a lot of stuff, and she can predict the market as well. I don't know how.
So taking that, and you obviously had to, I'm sure, go down quite a lengthy rabbit hole to understand what was going on after she planted that seed and kind of challenged you, right? What was your first sort of experiment in the space?
I guess I tried, because I wasn't seeing a lot of music happening, and I've reframed the way I think of music since that moment as well, to an extent that I don't even see it as its own separate form of art. I just see it as just one of the arts, and it doesn't really matter that you can hear it or see it. But at the time, I was still very much in the mindset, I'm a musician, I pick up my guitar and I sing, and that's all I do. So I had heard a couple of podcasts, and I'm always happy for podcasts, because this is how I learned at first. I just looked up on Apple Podcasts, music NFTs, and a few of the most successful artists in Web3 came up talking about their experience. Latasha was one of them.
Yeah, Latasha.
Yeah, Dill, Spotty Wi-Fi. And I was hearing their stories, and I just saw myself in them. Like, they were just like me, and they found this new wonderful world. And then I heard of Twitter Spaces, and that was the first kind of thing that I dove into. And I was like, I wonder if I can integrate my music, because a lot of the artists that were present in the space were doing, I felt at the time, a lot of hip hop or like DJs, there was Blau. And I'm like a singer-songwriter, very like acoustic. And I thought, I wonder if I can play music on Spaces. And so that's what I started doing, and literally busking. I would do 18 hours a day on Spaces, performing all the time for a whole year. Yeah. So that was a grind.
Just non-stop, just playing your music every single day.
Every single day. I would go on a random space in Chinese, and I would ask to speak, and I'd be like, hey, music, like, and then they would let me, because who's gonna say no, right, to a song? And that's kind of how I built my community for the first couple of months. And my first tangible experiment, after playing on spaces for like 3 weeks straight, I started really engaging with the people that were showing appreciation, and I released 5 editions of a song, and they all bought them. You know, it was just like immediate, oh my God, yeah, I want to own this song that I heard you play. It's so special and stuff. And so that's when I realized, wow, like they actually loved it, you know, and they don't care that it's not on Spotify or whatever. So, yeah.
Could you speak to that a little bit, just to break it down? Because, you know, like you and I, we understand like releasing 5 editions and what that looks like and what that means. But if for somebody that, you know, doesn't know or is new to this concept, especially with music, like what was the process like for that?
Really easy, honestly. I used OpenSea, which is, for those that don't know, it's, I guess, the primary the storefront, like marketplace for all NFTs. Any NFT that you create automatically ends up on this interface that you can see. And I just used their tool to mint, basically create 5 NFTs out of the same song. But I just created 5 copies with unique artworks, each one. So for, you know, it's like 5 signed prints with a different number on them, pretty much. And that's really it. I had guidance, thankfully. I want to shout him out, Nifty Sax. He's a incredible musician in this space who had been successful at the time, and he sort of took me under his wing and mentored me through it. So I definitely had help. But I created first those 5 copies, so to speak, and then 10, and then 15, and sort of built up from there. And then I took a little break, and 6 weeks later, I dropped 2,500. Which was huge, and that sold out as well. So it's kind of like, but again, I was grinding. Like it wasn't 2021 or craze, you know, NFT craze. It was like bear market. so yeah, 18-hour days, but it was worth it.
But, you know, as they say, a lot of positive things are built during the bear market, you know. It meant, yeah, probably had to push a lot harder. But I think whether you're in a bull market or a bear market, you're fighting for attention everywhere, all of the time, right? And I really love your busking analogy, actually. That's a very visual analogy, and then thinking about busking in the digital space for hours and hours and hours. And, you know, if you're busking, let's say you're, you know, outside, you're at a train station, you're out on the street, someone could come and, you know, donate and throw a few dollars in the hat or something, you know, or stand there with their family and listen to you for a while before moving on. But there's not necessarily like an expectation that comes with that donation or spending the time to listen to the music that you're playing. When we talk about Web3 and NFTs, there's this, it's like a very ruthless attention economy that we're in general with social media, right? So getting people's attention. B, we have that whole conversation around utility and being able to provide utility for the people that are supporting you with your journey, right? And I think that was such a big topic and has been such a big topic. It's kind of like, okay, if I'm supporting and I'm buying this NFT and you're building a community around your voice, then we've seen it with a lot of quite major NFT projects. There's this definition of utility, like what do I get, you know, versus somebody just donating out on the street. They walk on, they go home and get on with their lives. So I'd love to know like how you started to think about utility and how you personally define utility and how you approach that with the community that you've built.
At the time, all I wanted was to build a community around my message, my art. I wanted to be able to share it, because another big thing that I didn't mention, but the saddest part about streaming platforms for artists is that we have no way of getting in touch with the people that consume our music. So that's the biggest problem, because I don't even care about getting paid as much as long as I can keep in touch and like build a relationship and feel what you feel when you listen to my music. Couldn't do that, right, with Spotify. And so I really wanted to have that feeling, like not go through my art alone. And in my mind at the time, I was broke. I'm not going to lie. Like I was like broke completely. Government was giving me stimulus checks. Like, honestly, that was it. But I didn't really have resources. A lot of teams in Web3 have promised this big utility, big roadmap. Oh, we're going to build a movie studio and like whatever, where are you going to find the money? I don't know. I thought to myself, what can I offer that I have already that I think would be valuable to people and that is valuable to me and that is literally the thing I want to keep doing forever, because this needs to be sustainable. And so I just offered my time and my process and the music and special experiences that you wouldn't have otherwise. So I came to find that people really do value that, because as we become more and more disconnected, we seek that connection a lot. We seek new experiences and learning something new. So I dedicated a lot to my community, and I think that's why we're still here after 3 years, through the ups and downs. But I started playing a Discord concert for my collectors every week, just privately, and I take their requests. And then I pressed vinyl editions, so I give them free vinyl for people that had collected. Write them custom songs if they've collected a lot, right? It's very kind of gamified, so there's this continuous incentive. There's always another experience that you could aspire to have that culminates with like, come to the studio with me, and when I do my albums and experience that. So 2 years ago, I had a collector fly from New Jersey to Berlin, and she was in the studio with me for 2 days as we recorded with analog tapes in a really old studio in Berlin. And it was special for her, but it was so special to me because she made that happen. And so it was like having a member of my family there. Like, I was doing that for her, and she came to be with me. So that is something that not only do I have to or I can sustain, but I need, I crave. Like, I need them in my life at this point, Beyond, I haven't sold them anything in like a year and a half or 2 years even, I need to have them. Today we did a listening party in my Discord for my new album. I played them all the songs, and I almost cried because it was like, I'm doing it for my people, so.
And being able to do that, and let's take the listening party as an example, that was for people who already owned one of your songs, one of your NFTs, yeah? And so then it's like quote unquote gated access for those who are already in your community.
Yes.
Okay. And then, so how, like with all of this, like, okay, somebody coming out to experience your music in person, was that like an additional, say, perk of being a member of your community? Did they have to, collect X amount of songs before that became a reality, or was it just somebody that you had a special connection with?
That was, so actually it's interesting how it happened. There's 5 NFTs from my OG collection, Moonshot, that have like a diamond trait to them. And so those give you that special access to the studio. And those were an airdrop that I made for people that had collected like the top tiers of that drop. So there's only 6 actually access passes to the studio sessions when I do them. But that particular collector, she didn't have the diamond. She didn't have what it required. But she cut a deal with the collector of that one and rented it from them, basically. Yeah, just to have that experience.
So she could do it.
Yeah, which is, totally fine by me. It's amazing, because they collaborate, they help each other out. One couldn't come, so she could go, and they figured it out. So
right, and that also adds that additional layer of communication with your community and your fan base, where you may not have that. Right? You go to a concert, you might even be sitting a couple seats away from someone, but you may never have that conversation with that person, which is another layer what I do actually love, because with the community involvement digitally like this, and you're all kind of around the collector community that you have, they're all invested in some way. And so if you set up your Discord channels, or I'm sure you have other means of communication on X or on Telegram, like these sort of subsets of social media, there's a constant communication that's happening there, and people learning about each other. And like, I love the fact that one person had something that she desired, and so they were able to cut a deal. And I'm sure lots of great conversation came out of that as well.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, I've seen people, becoming couples after they met in the community, or best friends. And in 2 weeks, we're going on a cruise in Jamaica with 25 of us, where I'm performing for them every day. So
wow,
we're friends.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of utility.
At this point, we're friends. At this point, it's like, it's my family, I will do anything for them. And like I said, this was NFTs that I sold 3 years ago, almost 4 years ago. And there's no big, they're not like a financial incentive for me for this. They're my community. And so that's why when people were complaining about utility and they were hating the word, I was like, you guys are just offering something that's not authentic, because all the community talk and the utility talk and rewards, if you really did something that you loved, it wouldn't be a burden to offer utility. So
yeah, there were a lot of bloated roadmaps with false expectations. And yeah, I think like what you said, that term, keeping it authentic and true to what you can actually offer. Because my next question was going to be around how do you maintain that yourself, right? And do you feel this expectation to be constantly doing things and constantly releasing, but it seems like you don't necessarily feel that you have to constantly provide an update, and this is what we're doing, and this is my roadmap for the next couple of years. It seems to me to be very organic and free flowing, but correct me if I'm wrong.
I definitely feel a responsibility to keep them involved, because I know they want to, and I want them to. And it doesn't feel like a weight, it doesn't feel like a burden or anything, but I feel like they're my family, and I created that family. I invited them in my family. And so it is my responsibility to keep it alive, and so I really, especially I don't know, I feel like if you think about it though, think about Amazon, right? If they didn't keep in touch with their community, would they be Amazon? Probably not. How many spam Amazon emails do we get every day? Okay, and they have a team who does that, obviously. I don't. But I also I'm not Amazon. You know what I mean? I don't have that big community. But if that's a normal, even if we want to talk it in really brute terms, customer relationship, you have to do it. You know what I mean? So why are people complaining? I don't know. So
yeah, you still need to have that connection from that. I was reading somewhere, it's quote unquote that point of sale, right? And then now that's why email addresses are such a valuable thing, because that is how people keep in contact. But I like how through blockchain and through NFTs, it's not just like an email you wake up to at 7:30 in the morning every day and you want to unsubscribe or delete it because this doesn't speak to me. You're just hoping that out of the every 365 emails you send me a day that I'll click on one and make a purchase, right? So there's not that level of intimacy. But as you started to grow and more people started to be interested in your music, buy your NFTs, be involved in your community, did you feel like it started to get maybe a little harder to keep intimacy, or how do you keep that intimacy with everybody? I
try my best. I have all their contact points, and I try my best every couple of months to reach out to as many as I can personally and just check in, and I want to make them feel like I've been thinking of them. And see, I don't necessarily aspire to I don't care about having millions of fans, because I wouldn't be able to keep that intimate of a relationship with all of them. But that kind of relationship is what I thrive from. It just keeps me super motivated and even inspires me. Another story connected to that collector who came from the US to the studio, when she first heard my previous collection, she made a comment on the art, and she said oh, I wish I could hear your voice more from the recording. A comment on the mix, which got me thinking, and I was like, okay, that's good feedback. I took it in a positive way, interesting. Okay, it almost confirms some thought that I had. And then she was able to come to the studio, and actually the way I had structured that new record for me to do it analog, live, recorded to tape, was because I'd followed her creative advice. Okay, people want to hear my voice more, they hear it on Spaces, and a more intimate kind of experience, even on the record. And that kind of feedback would be really hard to get when your community is tens of millions of people and you end up not listening to anybody, Yeah,
it becomes noise.
Yeah, it really helps me on a creative level too. Not to say that I allow, or some people are like, oh, you shouldn't let your collectors influence your work. But it depends how you take it, she said something that resonated with me and that I felt was true, but I almost was afraid to admit. And so she almost validated,
I think there's a difference between that kind of feedback and trolling, right? I think because the way that you've set up yourself and the way that you carry yourself, I'm sure you do deal with a certain degree of trolling anyway. It's maybe the nature of the business, but the way that she probably approached that, it was constructive criticism or feedback that then enabled to be okay, maybe they like the more rawness, right? Which is, I'm sure, why you chose that medium then to record on, just to give some of that back a little bit.
Yeah, that intimacy almost that we had built because of the medium that we were using. It's almost like I wanted to replicate that. And so the subtitle of that new collection was called From Tape to Blockchain, because I almost see them as two similar but different things. A tape, it's just a piece of plastic with recorded indelible images or sounds. And the blockchain is the futuristic version of it, that's kind of accessible to everybody. But again, a chain of, of information. So, yeah.
Yeah. And so we spoke about your mom, and she was, I would say, the instigator or that put the fire under you to look into this technology. But you did do a collaboration with your father as well. And you mentioned Moonshot, and that was the project where you collaborated with him. Could you explain how that collaboration came about? How was his involvement? How was it working with your dad? And what the project was all about?
Yeah, so my dad is a Disney illustrator. So he's been working for Disney for over 35 years. So he's definitely definitely a successful artist, but always within kind of that Disney aesthetic and Disney world, so to speak. But he has this really cartoon style, that I really love. And of course I grew up with it, because he was drawing the whole time. Like he had a lot of artistic influence in the family, just like music and movies and comics everywhere. But it almost felt like before I got into Web3, like it was required of me as a singer-songwriter by the industry to look a certain way and take a certain kind of pictures, and the moody like singer-songwriter, oh my god, I'm so depressed, like that kind of, which like is not me. You see me, I'm like super happy. But I could never like get out of that, and express myself for real. And so when I learned about NFTs, I thought, oh my god, like I can actually now collaborate with my dad, which is something that the industry had always sort of discouraged because it's not very like cool or hip or whatever. Now I can do this, and I want to do something that's so authentic, because these songs are the most authentic effort I've ever made. And who else would be able to interpret those visually better than my dad, the person to whom I owe my artistic development and creativity. Let's make this real, on every level. And so I sent him the songs, and I said, just do you. Like, let's make this, find the stories within my music that I don't know are there yet. Find them and visualize them. And he did. And my dad and I didn't always have, the best like relationship in terms of like artistic things, because of course we would clash on like things, and working together with family members is not always the easiest thing. But this approach of just allowing each other to be authentic, because we knew it was going to be received well, brought us even closer together. Like that's our first, even though he's the one that introduced me to music and art in the first place, we never collaborated before. That was our first opportunity to do it.
And how many illustrations did he have to provide?
Well, he created 5 base ones, one for each song, and then all the different color variations and different traits and different frames. And it was quite a bit of work, and he did everything on a 2001 iMac. Because do you remember the ones like the big ones with the colors?
Of course,
those, because that is his favorite way to draw digitally, like to color stuff. So he drew everything by hand with pencil, and then imported everything, and then the coloring to give it this like retro feel, he used that old version of Photoshop that only works on that Mac. So everything was so slow rendering, like it was insane. So it's really vintage. But yeah, he did a lot. And then I worked with an amazing dev Wei, who was part of Nifty Music, which was kind of a music artist NFT incubator. And he created a custom smart contract for me. And him and Nifty Sax, they guided me through the whole thing. They did so much work. And helped me design the strategy, the launch strategy, the utility kind of gamified structure. But it was a lot. But people loved it. They received it really well. And I remember we sold like 700 on the first day. And then the remainder took 5 weeks of grinding, but it worked.
Grinding, pushing it, yeah, for sure. Yeah. So you mentioned there that you collaborated with dev partners. Would you say now that is still necessary? Like you still need that creative developer collaboration in order to really build a robust project like that?
I would say now there's been a lot of developments on that front. So there's plenty of platforms like Manifold that you can use to create your own smart contracts and your own minting mechanics, or transient. You can really get really creative with those mechanics. Unless I guess you want to do something insane, that you want something really, really custom. But at the time, see, I didn't want to go with a platform because there was some platforms I could have used, like Foundation or Sound XYZ, but I was like, why would I go from a platform like monopolized industry, like music industry with Spotify, to another platform in Web3 that they would still like take, control like of the smart contract or, of course get a fee, a percentage, but also like, what if they shut down? Like it happened, with so many platforms that why would I do that, right? Or like rely on a platform to bring me my community. I'd rather build my own community on my website, and then I can, if I ever want to use a platform for convenience, I can bring them with me, but it's decentralized that way. So that's, I guess, the biggest benefit of like doing things in your website. But there are tools that you can integrate to your website, just, super easy. So much easier. Yeah.
It's also a little bit more mature now. I think over time you start to see, okay, who's going to probably be sticking around as a platform versus who's not. So maybe there's a bit more security there with some of those decisions. But again, at the end of the day, there's benefits of taking that more of a purist approach, right? To having that access to your audience where you don't have to rely on another platform if you need to move from one place to another.
There can be a bit of platform bias too sometimes, like if some collectors, don't use a specific platform, they have their own reasons for it, or a specific blockchain, or, there's like kind of like that. So I wanted to bypass all that and, make it about my art and not somebody else's thing.
Yeah, someone else's product. And the title of that project was Moonshot. What was behind the name?
Oh, so it's interesting because some people asked me, oh, was that like crypto inspired? Because people use that, right? So Moonshot or whatever.
Going to the moon. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. Like it's one of the songs in the project is called Moonshot. And I wrote it in 2019 when I was not in the space. And the song is kind of like, it's a weird one because this happens to me with music often. But the first time I really realized was with that song, where I write a song and in the moment that I'm writing it, it feels like a story, right? I'm coming up with a story that doesn't necessarily relate to me in that very moment, or maybe it's inspired by something else, or I don't really know what it's about. And then only after a few years, I realized what it was about, and it almost like it predicted my future. It happened to me. Like my songs are my prophecies. It's weird. It just happened to me twice this year that I realized, and I was like, what? Like to the day, to the place, to the hour, like so detailed. Art is insane. Like it knows things before you do. I don't even think it's me writing that song in that moment. It's like the universe knows what's going to happen, just gives me a hint through the song. Like this happens. And so with Moonshot, it happened where I'm literally using, like, there's the word DeFi in the song, but used as like defying something, But like then crypto people were like, oh, did you write that? Like, did you use that for? No, absolutely not.
Like as a clever like analogy or something.
Right.
Yeah. Metaphor, I should say.
Yeah, but the song is about going for something unknown, unexpected, that seems impossible, ultimately looking for a place that feels like home. And why does it have to be so hard to go home? When home is like where you should be from the get-go. So that's kind of the behind the scenes meaning of the song. And then I felt every single line in that song happening when I found this space. So yeah, decided to call that collection Moonshot.
Beautiful. I mean, your whole story is honestly like such a beautiful poetic journey, to
Thank
be
you.
honest. Yeah, it's really inspiring, and I'm glad, thank you so much for this sharing it. There's a business side of all of this though, right? Obviously, this is sustaining you for your career, and you were able to use this technology and this space to, as we said in the beginning of this conversation, like rebuild your music career. And the business side is, financial is a big part of that. And there's floor prices involved, there's sales of your NFTs involved. There's, how much you can grow your community. Of course, I believe that's probably a consideration. But, that can be defined as one part of success, right? Which is the financial success. And you've been very, very successful, number one NFT, music NFT musician. Beyond the floor prices though, how do you define success for yourself beyond the financial aspect of it?
The financial aspect of it for me actually has never been a metric for success, because for me it's just a tool, like the success to me is, am I able to do the art I feel freely and do that as much as I can all the time? Yes. And so that is success, that is my goal achieved. And of course, I continue to have more ambitious ideas that I want to develop. And so it's not like, okay, you achieve your goal and then you become stagnant, because it's not like that. No entrepreneur or no inventor or whatever just has one idea, right? But I think their goal is always, can I continue freely developing my ideas, And so that to me, I feel like I achieved that. And yeah, of course, more ambitious ideas require more resources, also financial sometimes. But the biggest resource is time, the biggest one. I really believe that, because like I said at the beginning of my Web3 journey, I didn't have any financial resources, but I had time and passion. And so I was already lucky. I was like, oh my God, I'm doing this. I'm playing music all day. Like, it's amazing. Like, this is all what I want to do.
Of course. Yeah. I just, there's always like this tension, like, being like on the creative side myself, and that tension between wanting to create what you want, but then also making sure that you're financially secure and you have that stability as well. And then going out on your own, it's a whole other, experience when you're not, say, with a label or with a production company or whatever that might be, where you're sort of fending for yourself. And so I think that there's that just like a really interesting thing that happens with creatives when finance becomes involved in that conversation, right? And then obviously going a step further now with the financialization of the internet. And, we see sometimes on the timeline, I think there's a beautiful thing that finance has sort of brought people together too, because there's a level of investment that is added there beyond, how the art looks. And I was having a conversation the other day, and I was like, oh, so, the art, or maybe in this case, the music, sounds better or looks better the more the price goes up, right? And so there's that kind of conversation that's been happening with art NFTs specifically, right? It's more attractive if, it's more expensive. And I relate that to some of my own experiences too. Trying to find a unique place of how to price yourself, but also make sure that you don't necessarily completely sell out, where you're doing work that, yes, might pay you well, but then some of that creativity sort of dies inside, right? And so just was really interested like how you balance all of that and trying to keep yourself creatively as pure as possible, doing things that you love and putting out music that you love versus having to be confined to put this kind of music out? Or like you said, I guess this is why you did it, also your image. Like, you don't have to look a certain way. You have complete control over that, right? Oh,
yeah. I mean, I think like the image thing especially, that was just, I'm sorry, bullshit. But like how are you, I think it's so silly. And that speaks to the music having even less importance in the traditional music industry. How you look is more important. And I was like, that's not, honestly, I don't care about that, but I definitely, I'll say this for sure. I don't compromise on the art side. Like I will not, because it's not, like I said at the beginning, it's hard enough, like you said, to put yourself out there, go out on your own, and dealing with everything and just having the energy to do it, that the emotional reward has to be immense for it to be worth it. I just, I've never wanted to compromise on the music side, and I'm not beginning to now. Now I'm like, I don't need to be a millionaire to like do this. I as long as I can feel happy. I'll give you an example. Like, I just went to Germany in September and recorded 15 pieces of music in 5 days. I went to the Black Forest.
Yeah,
my producer.
I saw.
Yeah, my producer lives there, and in this incredible house. And we recorded pieces that we wrote over 8 years. And I was like, this is, if I could prolong this moment just for a little bit longer, I could die the next day. And this would be my dream come true. Because it's like, I've never felt, it's about feeling. Like, it's weird, but it's really, I feel so good right now. It's like when you eat something so delicious that you want it to continue. It's that feeling. So yeah, that to me is the most important thing.
Yeah, it's the experience of the creation as much as putting that creation up on the wall or putting it out there and releasing it, right, for people to hear.
That's right. And that's also ties into a lot of people. You nailed it. A lot of people are like, oh, why don't you just use AI to recreate your own songs in different versions? And I'm like, you don't get it. That's not why I do music. I do music for the process, and it would be so like sterile, and like I wouldn't care about music if I had to do with AI. I wouldn't, so. Do you think, just because you brought it up, I wasn't going to, but you did. Sorry.
Would you ever incorporate some kind of AI tooling into your work, or is it a complete no?
I don't judge AI because, like, I just don't think it's the tool right for me, but it's a very personal, intimate experience that I have with music that is the reason why I do it. But I would never judge another artist who enjoys doing it that way, right? The thing that I love the most, that I think is most valuable about art, is, do I get to see the artist in a vulnerable way while looking or experiencing their piece? If the answer is yes, and I feel it, I don't care what tool you use. There's so many AI visual artists that I appreciate very much, and I get emotional looking at their work and hearing them talking about it. So I don't really care if they prompted it and if they reworked it, I actually had a conversation with Anna Kondo the other day in Marfa, incredible artist with so much experience. And she asked me the same question. How do you feel about me using AI to make music to pair with my art? And that's the question I asked her back. I said, do you love it? She said, yes. And then I'm like, okay, great. That's it. Perfect. Then I feel good about it,
Yeah. There's a reason why, right?
The only thing I will add on that is just like, the only thing that worries me about AI music in particular is that who are they training from? And my fear is that big record labels might have exploited some of the artists that they have signed under contract, and same with tech platforms that might sell those rights or like, you know, use them to train models without the consent of the artist. And with music, it's so hard to track. And I know there's a monopoly behind it, so I'm a little scared about that. And that's the only thing.
Yeah. And hopefully that gets ironed out. But it's very similar, of course, with artists, like, you know, non-musicians, like painters, graphic designers, photographers, like, you know, it's it's quite messy right now, and have to see how, you know, that all gets fixed. And I was talking about this before, but I do love the fact that blockchain is in the conversation, because it provides a way to authenticate when there's a lot of AI generated imagery, music, content, you know, on the timeline. I think it's the sort of, hopefully, the saving grace to be able to track something that is original, where it came from, what is the origin, you know, versus something that was generated. And just can't wait to see where that all nets out, honestly.
They go hand in hand, for sure.
Yeah. Good timing.
Yes, right. Perfect.
Definitely needed. So yeah, talking about, you mentioned the physicals that you made, like the records, and sending them out to your collectors. And then earlier on, we were talking about this like blending of the physical and digital space. Do you feel like, you know, having this physical component to your work, like obviously music, it's like we hear it, it's non-tangible as we've discussed, but then creating some of these tangible elements and objects that people can then hold physically, have in their space. Do you see that as like maybe the future of some of this, because it is digitally native? But, you know, we, you know, as artists and collectors love it when we get a print. Like I have the CryptoPunks print over there. We like to see something physical in our space that we can actually hang up. But I've also been thinking about like how technology might progress, where maybe, you know, if there's, well, we already have glasses, right? Where perhaps you can have physical or digital objects hung up in your space, right? But you seem to have a lot of success with the physical side of things as well, and giving those out. Do you see that as the future of where things might go?
I completely agree with you. There's something really special about having something physical. But I also agree that like we live in a world that's very fast and nomad at the same time. You know, both you and me live across the world from where we're born. And like, imagine if we had a whole collection of art or vinyl to carry with us everywhere, you know, it would be a bit intense. But the most special thing that I think having a physical piece of art or record is that when you receive it, you're under the impression that shortly before you got it, it was in the hands of who created it, you know? And so at least that's what I feel like. I have back over there's a Sabet painting, drawing that he did of me while I was performing. He gave it right to me, right in my hand, you know? And that is why I love that, because it was his, it didn't exist. He made it and he gave it to me, you know? So it's like this very special connection. And even with a vinyl, even if you buy it in a store or you order it online and it's a fulfillment center or whatever, like it kind of has that spice to it, you know, that flavor that it came from me to you. And so I don't know if we can ever replace that, you know, because I don't know, we are physical, tangible people. So it's almost like I'm giving you an extension of me, you know, when I give you my record. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. But also it's hard to explain it, but I'm sure you've gone through it. When you do actually mint something or you make a purchase, you know, you buy an NFT or you mint an NFT or you buy it on secondary, and you use in your Ledger wallet or whatever, and it appears in your wallet and it's now yours. There's something really special with that process of ownership of something physical, and the magic happened and it works, and now it's mine. But then there's also that magic that happens when, like you were saying, you buy a record or you get the CD and you physically unwrapping something, opening it, smelling it. There was always a smell that came with those like cheap plastic CD album covers where you had to like unravel it all, and so yeah, I don't know. I think there's definitely space to have both, but I do agree with you, your analogy of like having a bunch of records, and we are moving into a way more nomadic way of living, I feel, where we are not so stationary. And what is the idea of the concept of a city in the future, I think, is going to be up for a lot of debate, as technology continues to evolve and allows us to pretty much live anywhere we like, right? So yeah, lot to figure out there.
Yeah, it's we're definitely in transition times, but yeah, I don't know. I feel like, even with the minting, what you just talked about, minting and buying on secondary, kind of reinforces my feeling, which is I prefer minting than buying on secondary, because I have that feeling that like I'm getting this from the source, like buying on OpenSea is kind of like, okay, like anyone could do this, but minting, like, come on, you know what I mean? It's cool. It's really cool.
Yeah. You got to be lucky enough to get in there and get a mint as well. Obviously if there's a constrained supply, or sometimes they're auctioned, and sometimes it's nice to see how it does. But yeah, minting, secondary, all of it is it's a really sort of new experience that even when I'm sending Ethereum or Bitcoin or wherever it might be, or receiving it, there's again another layer of magic there that happens that I hope that everyone can experience one day.
Right. Yeah. Do you connect to your ledger when you mint? Really?
Absolutely.
Oh God. Yeah. It's a special ledger for minting, right? Or
it's just like a hot wallet, a
hot ledger.
Wallet. Yeah, not my
right.
vault.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah. For a moment, I was like, oh my
God. Oh no. Wallet hygiene
always
is important.
Always.
Yes. Yeah. But I still like to have it secure like that anyway. Just like another second layer, third layer
for sure
of security there. Yeah. And then your analogy, just to close this point out, of like people owning gold back in the day, and being able to be mobile with a ton of gold. Like how are you gonna move that much money across borders, or travel with physical gold, silver, diamonds, that kind of stuff? So I think it's making it a lot easier to be mobile and to have things digitally. I think it's just, this is like our generation, I suppose, but then thinking about generations that are being born into this will probably not know the difference. I don't know if there'll be nostalgia experienced if they didn't grow up with physical records or CDs, and actually living in the time when that was all you had. So perhaps it will just be, and that's just what it is. And then we'll have the nostalgia of, remember when we, could unwrap a CD, and the CD tray would break all the time, but everything or having to fix your tapes when they unraveled as well, with the pencil and all those kind of things that we sort of experienced. Yeah. Sort of dating myself a little bit there, but
No, I've experienced that too, but you're making me think about, like you mentioned it earlier, actually, the evolution of money, like walking around with gold, going across the border. That's when they came up with checks, like bring this to another bank, traveling from Paris to London, bring it over there. They'll give you and like, I can imagine probably our parents didn't, when they were our age, like young, they didn't have credit cards, or like not credit cards, but like ATMs and things like that,
No.
Right. So for us, now we never have cash, you know? So it's the natural evolution.
Yeah. In fact, some places don't want the cash, you know, and then it's like you have to have the debit card or your Apple Pay or whatever it might be, you know, it's kind of going another direction. And then those generations are like kind of fearful of that. And you're used to one thing and now everything changes on you. So I think we're in that transition, and I think this will just eventually just become the norm.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
Yeah. So moving on to another project that I found just extremely interesting is your No Ordinary Kind, which was inscribed on the Bitcoin blockchain as an ordinal. Why Bitcoin? A lot of collectors or artwork is, you know, Ethereum or Solana, blah, 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 Basic, whatever, etc. Why did you choose Bitcoin for this specific project?
I was very much, and I still am, a big fan of the Ordinals protocol. Like, I love it. I think it's amazing to be able to create NFTs directly, like, on chain on Bitcoin, because ultimately Bitcoin is the philosophical asset on top of the, you know, monetary asset that all of this stems from. And so last year and part of 2023, I spent a lot of time with that community and spent a lot of time and money inscribing a bunch of songs on the Bitcoin blockchain, songs that I felt deserved to be on that chain because of a message I wanted to leave behind, kind of a trail for the future people. Like when we're dead and like in 2300 whatever AD, people are gonna find, like, you know, drawings on cave walls, and they're gonna find a song, you know. And that was kind of the movie I was watching in my head. And so there's five pieces that I inscribed that each have a particular meaning. And the No Ordinary Kind in particular, I'd started actually a working relationship with a team called Seize Control on Bitcoin. And we just connected so much on this whole philosophy. Like their founder, who's an incredible person, one of my best friends, learned kind of the same story that I'm telling you here on the podcast. And he was like, wow, this is like very Bitcoin, you know, this is very like representative of why a lot of us are here. And so we started a collaboration, and they were starting a project called No Ordinary Kind that I really, really resonated with, because we live in this world where we are treated like numbers. We are not, we literally, like, coming from the music industry where you don't know who your fans are listening to your music. All you see is numbers on a screen, like 1 million streams, 1 million people listen to my songs. Who are they? All I see is the number, you know? And so I wrote a song inspired by kind of that idea and that concept. And yeah, that's kind of where it came from. And of course, I had to inscribe it and make sure it was indelible.
And so for those who may not be familiar with ordinal inscriptions, just like in the maybe simplest way possible, like, what is an inscription?
I guess from the outside, when you look at it, it's just like an NFT, but supported by a different blockchain. So on Bitcoin instead of Ethereum or whatever. But from a more technical standpoint, you are almost like injecting your data, whether it's your art, your text, your song, inside of one of the blocks that's being mined of the Bitcoin blockchain, manually mined, right, by the miners. And so there is that physical aspect to that as well that I really like. Like, this is manual labor here that we're all doing. Not that I mine, but like if I can put a little stamp, you know, on a piece of Bitcoin, so you're linking this data that you're injecting in the block to a specific Satoshi, which is the smallest unit of a Bitcoin. So you can even choose the Satoshi, the date of the Satoshi when it was mined, and you can sort of deepen the layers of your artistic message through the Bitcoin properties. Like, what kind of sat do I want? So I picked a sat that was mine the day I wrote the song at a specific time, and it was at a specific block height. Like, you can really get nerdy with all that stuff, and use it as a canvas so that it would make sense. I even found a Satoshi. Someone actually gifted it to me. Shout out to Ganzi. He's a sat hunter. I found a Satoshi with a name, like the kind of like the serial number of the sat reads, "It isn't music."
Oh, wow.
Isn't that like so beautiful? Like, it's the most beautiful thing. And it's in Bitcoin, it's so cool. And so then I wrote a song called "This Isn't Music," inscribed it on there. Like, you can really go deep. So I love it.
Like, it's like archaeology in a way. The people, like you said, people in the future will be able to like go in the weeds and hunt some of this stuff down. Yeah. Would you say it's accessible to, a wider audience? Like, was there more of a technical hurdle for you here? I mean, you're obviously very passionate about it, and you did the work to find that special sat that made sense to you. But for, say, an artist that's now hearing this and is like, I want to do that. Like, how accessible is it, and where would you say somebody should start?
Thankfully, it's pretty accessible because the community, as the whole Web3 community, is still pretty small. And so everyone is very happy to help and excited when there's someone wanting to join the community. So if an artist, honestly, I would go for the Ordinals thing specifically, ordinals.com, and read. They have a lot of great information there. The Ordinals Foundation, Casey, who created the protocol, and his team, put out all the instructions. There's a lore there too. The reason why I liked it was because it's like, okay, this is lore filled, and I can see everyone's a nerd here. Like, it's very, it's cool. It's kind of Lord of the Rings 2.0. So I would say it definitely takes a little work. But it's almost easier than NFTs, because NFTs have smart contracts that are complicated to understand. Ordinals, you're just slapping an image on a sat, and that's it. So you have to be careful, because when you do it, you can't delete it. That's the only thing. So
it's there forever.
There.
Yeah. Which is the beauty of it too.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the permanence, right, and the provenance of it specifically.
Yes.
Yeah. So thinking about mindset again, we started this conversation around like your mindset, where you were before you got into this, and thank you for bringing us on that journey. It's a very visual story to sort of where you are today, and communities are, I think, a big part of it, as we've said, right? And I would say, like, for me, just hearing you, it's something that I would wake up for. The community is what would be driving me, as well as my own passion to create. But that's where it flourishes, and you get the responses, much like an artist putting up their work on the wall in an exhibition and seeing people, gather around. There's something special there as well. And I was just wondering, like, what did a community give you that, like, a contract may not have given you? Because you were saying, with, like, in a traditional sense, you're just seeing numbers and you don't have that connection. So is there anything that you feel like it gave you that a big contract couldn't have?
Yeah, a big contract would have implied that I would have focused on the contract, on fulfilling the contract, whereas having a community, with a community, I focus on them. I focus on the community. Whereas if I were signed to Universal or whatever, I would be so worried that I have to fulfill every point in the contract and not break the law, not break the rules. Otherwise, they're going to sue me, and like it's a fight or flight kind of thing, or I'm going to end up not feeling satisfied. Whereas with a community, I can focus on them and dedicate all my energy, instead of spending it reading through these fine prints or whatever. Like, on people, which is music is for people. Art is for people. It's not for a corporation to try to screw you over because you didn't read through every line. It's like, so I wouldn't exchange it. Like I've said it before. Now I've also really I've strayed away from the traditional path that a musician would have. So I'm embracing my art in a way that's a lot more holistic and world building and multisensory, rather than just okay, listen to my song while you vacuum your apartment. That's not I don't experience music that way. And so why would I want someone else, the recipient of my work, to experience it that way? But even if let's say Universal Music came to me today and offered me a great contract, I wouldn't sign it because I'm just not interested. That's not what I'm looking to pursue. So
do you ever think about, if I had a big machine behind me, how that may change things? Do you ever sort of wish, I'm doing so much myself, I wish I had a bigger team or a bigger machine?
Yeah, I could use some help at times, for sure. I wouldn't mind. I don't know if I would want a big machine. It would really depend, back to what I was mentioning earlier. I don't want to compromise on the art. And so as if the machine was there to just help the art for what it is, great. But I don't think it would, unless it's a machine that gets built organically over time, little by little, with the help of your community. No one hit wonder, the 15 minutes of fame. It's not, I had it when I did X Factor, so I know what it's like. It goes away really fast. So I don't think I would like it, unless, Taylor Swift, right? She has a huge machine behind her. She's basically like a politician at this point, I don't know, so how much more she needs to grow even more. I don't know, but I don't feel much in her music anymore, I used to feel a lot more. The last album, Life of a Showgirl. Oh, is that really all you have to, it's not human anymore. You know what I mean? So, I don't know.
Why do you think that is? Do you think it's you get to a certain size, or we're talking about the scale of the machine, and then you kind of feel maybe there's a box that you've now fit into, and there's certain things that maybe there's other powers that, at work there steering what you should be or what you should put out? Or is it through time and scale, you maybe come a little disconnected with your truth?
Yes, there's that for sure. That's the biggest concern. And then like I hinted at before, just the connection with your people. I would be afraid to lose that, honestly, because I've also seen it in the last couple of years as I got busier and busier, more and more travel. I miss my weekly concerts, and I miss some things like that, and I don't like it, but it's still, of course, really manageable. But I really need it as an artist to just have that connection. So, and as a person too. So I would be afraid to lose a little bit of that.
Yeah. That connection with everybody else around you. Yeah. And I think we're in a space that is always on. I mean, social media is always on, right? Instagram, all these apps is on all the time. You can go, someone's just posted something 2 seconds ago, whatever. But I feel like Web3, if I miss the timeline for a day or a week, or I go on holiday, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so much to kind of catch up on. And there's that FOMO that happens, oh, what did I miss? Did I miss something? Did I miss something important? Out of my experience with social platforms or spaces that I've been sort of really interested in, Web3 is one of those spaces I feel has the most on button that you can't really turn off, and it's hard to miss something, right? When you feel like you might be missing out. So with that always on culture that does exist, how do you set time for yourself and set boundaries for your own personal time, like for Violetta yourself, you know, like your mental space?
Yeah, it's hard, as I'm sure it is for you as well, for most people. First of all, I mean, I'm an always on person myself. Like I'm always excited, so I like it. That's my like premise is I love it that it's always on. But I did hit like a almost burnout a couple years ago where I just like it started becoming autopilot almost, and then you start not being productive anymore, and it's all because you're obsessed, and that's just silly. So I try to, it's also important for creating, right? Like stepping out, doing a different kind of rest, like a deep play kind of rest, like going and doing something different, and it's really good for your creativity. And so I try to remind myself of that and say, I think I need to go to the beach and like stare at the ocean for a little bit. And I know I'm not wasting time because I know I will have ideas, because I know myself at this point that any time that I don't spend always on social media is time that I'm gaining to have ideas. So, yourself, like you're always thinking of something when you're building something of your own. It's never a break, it's never real. Even when you're watching the silliest thing on TV, you're always like quietly watching for ideas and inspiration. So,
Yeah. Taking a walk, sometimes you're in conversation with someone, your mind may just travel to some idea that's just popped in your head. I think that's the creative blessing and the sort of creative quote unquote curse. I don't want to call it a curse, but we are always thinking about something that we're going to be creating. So yeah, I suppose we are technically always on anyway.
For sure.
So yeah,
there's no way around. Yeah. Even when you're sleeping, you're on.
Yeah, there's no off switch.
No, I dream my collectors sometimes. I do. Like it's like always on, but it's so cool. It's cool because we have a strong passion. So I think we're lucky.
I'd fall asleep and I'd have like an editing task. We've got the footage back and we need to edit it, and I'd be like falling asleep and like dreaming about what the edit should be and waking up and like, oh God, let me write that note because that actually made sense. A lot of it comes when you're in that, what's it like, that sensory sort of deprivation, I think it's called, or something like that, where you're transitioning to sleep or you're like really exhausted, and somehow these ideas start to fall into your mind. At least that's how it works for me. It could be 4:00 in the morning and ideas will come just random times.
Then what do you do?
It's either you write them down.
Do you go to sleep and try to dream them, or do you and now you're awake kind of thing?
No, I try to just fall asleep. Like I very rarely get up and try to execute on it. I'm normally up at that time trying to figure something out, or I'm putting a late night in, or some hours, because I'm definitely a night person. So my creativity starts waking up in the sort of late afternoon going into the night. And maybe that was how, just because of how we used to work at the first place I started at, it was a very much like 24-hour shop. There was no off button there. So everybody was working quite around the clock. And I feel like nighttime is quiet. And it's where, yes, you start to get tired. And I think you start to then forget about everything else and can really focus. And maybe that's why, you're then open to receive more. For sure.
Yeah, I'm definitely a night person as well. And it completely, same reasons. Around 6 p.m., it's like, oh, I'm so inspired.
Yeah. So, this whole conversation really is about like it's ownership, and ownership of your path, your music, your style, who you are, what you want to put out. And so maybe like when you were back at 18, you probably had like a different perception of what ownership is to now. And I'd love to know, like, what does ownership now mean to you personally?
It's a big question. I don't think I was. See, I think at the time, I don't think I ever thought about it, actively. But in hindsight, I think the concept of ownership that I kind of natively felt, but unknowingly felt back then, hasn't changed from what I feel now. And it really relates to the ability to express yourself. I of course relate it to my art and my music. It's like, as long as I can own the ability to make it, if I have that freedom and to be the owner of it, therefore decide where it takes me and who to give it to. It's like when you own a house versus renting. Owning has a whole set of benefits. You can do so many things with your house. And it's the same thing, I think, in general, whatever it is to any person that they feel really strongly about, if they have freedom over it, that to me is ownership. And of course, my music is my freedom. It's my currency. It's who I am. I've had to explain it to friends and to people in my family. There is no work for me and music and then Violetta as a person. It's the same thing, same thing. And so, yeah, I feel like I own myself when I'm able to own my music and my rights to do it. So,
yeah, which has a whole level of independence that comes with it. Whether that's, I think sometimes there can be a bit of fear that steps in with that, and having that complete freedom of ownership, like with your crypto, it can be taken away from you. You have to just be way more diligent. And, just listening to your story, I feel like you have to be very, very diligent with every move that you make, versus maybe being wrapped up in some kind of deal or company or corporation where maybe a lot of these decisions are sort of done for you or guided, you're guided through them. There's a layer of extreme diligence and accountability that I think you have as an artist in that way. So it's really special to see happen.
Thank you. Yeah, accountability is a big one, because a lot of people claim to want ownership and to have diligence, but then they don't want the accountability. And that's a thing that I also do consulting for music artists who want to get into the blockchain space. And that's the main thing that me and my partner try to express is you are responsible. So just the same way you're responsible for brushing your teeth every day, so you stay healthy and eat healthy, and it's the same thing. Nobody's gonna do it for you. That is really hard for some artists to grasp. It's a really weird thing, So I understand why, because we're trained differently, but that's the biggest thing for sure.
Yeah. And it's a mindset thing too. I think, you could argue that not everyone is supposed to, start a business. Everyone can. You could set up a corporation, next week or something, right? And get it done. But what it takes to keep that business going, or sorry, not even keep it going, get it off the ground to begin with, is completely different than just going to get a job. And both are fine in their own right. I think it's just a mentality and the individual either learning what that takes or just being honest with ourselves. Is that the path that we want to take? Is it me? Do I have the passion for that? Or do I need a team? Do I need a large space to be accountable for me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're making me realize, I never had a job. I never went to college, and I sucked at school. So I feel like I really sucked. I feel like I was never Like I was never, like you said, there's some people that like, it's not for them to be responsible for everything in their life. They just can't, they're going to be unhappy. So why push them, right? It's like, oh, go up, climb Mount Everest when they don't want to. My friend Kane Mayfield says this all the time. Shout out to him. But like, it's the same way that if they ask me, go get a job or like be good at school, be nice to your professors, teachers. That's against my nature. Like I can't. So yeah.
Yeah. There's like a rigidity around it. That comes with that too, right? So you either like structure, you don't like structure, you like the freedom, you don't. But if you have the freedom, then you got to be responsible for that freedom. It's I don't think any one of them you can have your cake and eat it, right? So
wow, that's a good expression. Have your cake and eat it. I like it.
Yeah, it's almost impossible, but I think we do the best with which path that we take, and you feel it inside once you're doing it, if that's right or not. I think. Yeah. I have a question that I asked everybody on the podcast, and it's sort of like for you, it's kind of what does it mean for you to be like a steward, right, in a community-led space? We're in 2005 now, and I don't know how much it's changed from a few years ago, but what does it mean to you to have that responsibility almost to be like a kind of taking a lead role in that space? You said that you also have a consulting practice as well. How is that for you?
I'm really passionate about it. I really, really believe in it. And I just like, I always try to push people to do stuff. This is something that like also my family is like, yeah, stop. Like some people don't want, but I tend to see when someone has potential, maybe that's also what, because my parents were like that with me. When there is potential, I'm going to do everything I can so that it will meet what they can do, their abilities. And it's kind of exhausting sometimes because why am I taking on somebody else's thing when I should be thinking about my own, and they clearly don't want, or they're not ready, or it doesn't work for them. But I see it so clearly and I spend so much energy. So I'll have to say, like in the last couple of years, especially at the beginning of my Web3 journey, I was trying to really like push a lot of music artists in this space to like do things. But then, eventually everyone took their own path and did their own thing and maybe weren't so active in the space anymore. And I was really sad. Like I actually, it made me feel, like my dream had broken a little bit. And also it was because I spent a lot of energy in trying to make it work for all of us as a community. And so now I'm trying not to get so wrapped up as much, not emotionally, at least, because that's the thing. But I love it here, and I think it's the future, and it's changed my life in ways that I could have never imagined. And so I want to be a steward for it. I want to push it forward, and it would be against my nature not to, because I really love it.
Yeah. So. Yeah. And, lastly, for some artists that may, be taking the indie route and perhaps have less than, 1,000 true fans. And we've all heard that phrase, if you can have 1,000 true fans that are really invested in what you're doing, you've done extraordinarily well, and you can, as you said, you can really focus on this audience and the community that you build. But for those that don't have that, or maybe not even close to that, what would you say it really takes? And also, where should someone start their journey?
What it really takes is passion. And that's the main ingredient. You really have to want it. But want it for the right reasons, not for the money, not for the fame, not wanted because it's like so primal, like it's just your art calling you. and a lot of time, generosity, dedication. Don't be greedy with your time or with yourself. Give it out, put out all the energy you can. And where do you start? I mean, I feel like, and I used to be that way. So it's like me telling myself that I didn't have, let's say you have like 3 people that like your music in the whole world. Start with them. 3 people that have heard your music. Maybe 1 that passed by on the street while you were busking. Talk to them, make them feel, let them know that you appreciate them and establish that relationship. Really start with 1, because if you can't get 1 or 5, how can you get 100 or 1,000, So that would be my advice.
Agree. And I think just to put on top of that, I think, being open to, you said something great earlier on about you received some criticism or feedback, let's say. Being open to some of that too, and I think as artists, we can sometimes have, think that we're going in the right direction and some of the ego can creep in. But I think being open to, especially building in public, I think there's a lot that comes with that. And hats off for being able to be so public with what you're building and to do it and to build and be out there and be vulnerable as well. And I've really enjoyed listening to your story. And when I heard about your story quite a while ago, it just really piqued my interest. And I kind of always have used it as an example of, look, you can actually do this. You don't have to be a musician if you are, fantastic, but you can also be an artist in many different forms and make use of this technology, for your benefit. And, now, obviously like digging a lot deeper into, your path and your trajectory and hearing it from your mouth. I just want to say congratulations and for taking that final swing and not giving up back then. And just, what you've become, it's a really inspiring story for others that may want to take this path too.
Thank you so much. No, I really appreciate that. And I appreciate you wanting to dive in this deep with people, because sometimes it does take a little bit of a deeper conversation to understand the nuances. And I know I found podcasts like this one very useful. Because you never know, there might be someone out there who just needs to hear this, and then that's it, that's, if I didn't have it, if I didn't hear that podcast with Latasha, maybe I wouldn't be here. So, I really, really appreciate it. Thank you for the kind words, and thank you for helping spreading the stories as well.
No, of course, it's important not to just see the success story and the website and going deeper to see what it takes to get here. So thank you for coming on and sharing everything. Oh, and where can people find you, Violetta? Where can people connect with you and find your music and find you?
Yeah, so they can visit my website, violettazironi.com. Find me on X at Zironi Violetta, Instagram, all the social media, and find my music. I mean, see, that's the thing. I haven't used the streaming platforms in 4 years. So my people may need to spend 30 seconds more digging through my website to find it. And that's the only thing. But that's kind of what I want. So only people who really want to hear it, they will find it. So, yeah.
Put in the effort. It's worth it. It's definitely worth it.
It's worth it. Yeah, I think so. And then if they stay for another 30 seconds, they're in. Perfect.
Amazing. Thank you. And thanks for taking the risk in this attention deficit economy as well. Please spend the extra 30 seconds to find the music.
Yep. Thank you.